Hi everyone, welcome back. I've been thinking about something else lately, and that's how different relationships between men and women seem today compared to when I was a young person growing up, I suppose. And maybe this is a very Gen X thing to talk about, but sometimes I look around and I think, wow, the world has changed so much, the way people date, relationships, marriage, family, and even how people, see themselves feels very different from the world I knew when I was growing up. And I want to say up front, this isn't me saying, things were better in the past or anything like that. It's not me saying things are worse today. It's just me sharing, I suppose, the things I'm noticing. Because when you've been around for a while, you do start to notice changes. And what interests me is how much the whole idea of relationships has changed, how both men and women are trying to navigate this new world. Like when I was growing up, there seemed to be more of a common idea of how life was supposed to go. You grew up, you found a partner or a mate, maybe you got married, had children, built a life together. Of course, not everyone followed that path though. Like I had friends who stayed single and never married. But for a lot of people, right, having a partner was just seen as a normal part of adulthood, Now today, obviously things seem very different. Like a lot of people are choosing to stay single longer, and some people actually are choosing to stay single for the rest of their life. And one of the biggest changes I've noticed is that a lot of women today seem more comfortable being independent, and basically a lot of them are living life, as single women. When I was younger, there was still a pretty strong expectation that a woman would eventually, find a partner, a male partner, and build a life with someone. But today, many women just seem much less afraid of being alone. They can create their own life and support themselves financially. So they don't necessarily feel like they need a man maybe in the same way as previous generations did. And I think that's had a huge cultural change. But I think there's another side to this, and that's what's happening with men. So, for a long time, men grew up with a very clear idea of what it meant to be a man. And I think the message most men were given was that you were expected to provide. You were expected to protect your family. You were expected to work hard, to be dependable, the dependable one, and take responsibility. That was the role many men, I think, were taught from a young age. But today, the world does look very different, and the traditional roles between men and women have changed. And then there's the subject of dating. Like dating has also changed dramatically. When I was younger, right, people usually met through friends or work or school or just everyday life. Today, a lot of young people are using dating apps and online platforms to meet their potential partners. And sure, that can be kind of, convenient. It does make finding someone, I don't know if it's easier or maybe quicker, but does it make finding someone easier? Or does it make people less willing to commit? Because there always seems to be another option on the internet, I mean, I've never used an online dating platform, but I could imagine you would go have a look and you would see thousands of women or thousands of men that you could just choose from. But yeah, having more choices, I could imagine would drive me nuts. Because, there'd always seem to be another option, just a click away. Oh, another thing that I've noticed is, the way people think about masculinity and femininity has also changed. Like When I was young, there were much clearer expectations around how men and women were supposed to act. Today, those lines are much less defined. But whether people agree, with all these changes or not, at the end of the day, there's no doubt that relationships between men and women have dramatically changed. And the thing I find myself wondering is this, are these changes actually making people happier? I suppose it's good that people have more choices about, who they want to be, how they want to live and what kind of relationships they want. That's kind of a good thing. But at the same time, I see a lot of, a lot of loneliness, and I see a lot of young people voicing their loneliness on a lot of YouTube videos. And going back to the men, and I can understand this, okay. Going back to the young men, I see a lot of frustrated, angry young men on the internet, and it seems like they've given up on hope on finding a female partner. And I don't know whether it's just a trend, maybe it's in fashion, maybe it's just something that's trending, maybe it's a phase young men are going through. But it's a concern, because I kind of feel sad in a way, because, I just look at I suppose I feel blessed because I met my partner and I met each other when we were just, in our late teens, and we connected and we've been together ever since. So, over 30 years, and it's a long time and it's rare these days. But it was very easy for us. We actually met in a nightclub, but through friends. And it was just so much more simpler. And when I see young people today, and it seems like a lot of young people are giving up on finding a mate or a partner. And that's kind of concerning, because at the end of the day, I think that everyone wants to feel loved. Yeah, I suppose it's good that people have more choices about who they want to be, how they want to live, and I suppose what kind of relationship they want. But at the same time, I see a lot of loneliness. I see people who want independence but also want connection, and someone to share a life with. I don't know if all these changes are making people happier, or whether in some ways they've made relationships more confusing. Maybe every generation, has its own challenges, I suppose. And I'm just a Gen X woman watching all this happen, I suppose, and wondering what other people think. Do you think relationships are harder today than they used to be? Do you think men and women are happier with more independence? Or do you think people are missing something that previous generations had? Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for being with me today. And if you've liked the video, please leave a like and leave a comment, because I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. In the meantime, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.